today's video is going to be a little bit different, and it'll be some good information for those of you who ride with your wife or girlfriend, and you are thinking about possibly purchasing a Voyager, because with me today is my one and only passenger on the bike and in life, and that's my wife. She has done, what do you think now, probably 6,000 or 7,000 miles on this bike?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and you have ridden on pretty much, with the exception of sport bikes, you've been on pretty much every one of my motorcycles, right?
Yes, we've had a couple that I've ridden on the back of.
Yeah, so the last one was the VTX 1300. I'm sure you remember that one well.
Yes, not fun memories, but I remember.
Yeah. So let's just hop right into it. In terms of comfort, compared to the VTX 1300, and you remember years ago we had a Raider and we had a Shadow.
Yes.
In terms of comfort compared to those bikes, how do you compare this to that?
I wouldn't even be able to compare them. This is very different. It's very comfortable, whereas before the seat was much smaller and I frequently felt pain in my rear and my back.
Right.
I don't experience that on this bike.
Yeah, so when you're riding back there on this bike, any pressure points, any weird pains or anything like that?
No.
And be critical. You know, this is, you know, people want your honest review. And just kind of for reference, how tall are you?
I'm 5'6".
5'6". 5'6". What is it? 280 pounds?
Very funny.
Now, actually, both of us are pretty normal sized. I'm about 200 pounds with all my gear on. This semi-athletic build. I know you can't see me, but if you just picture like Captain America mixed with Thor.
It's very similar.
Yeah, so you heard it from my wife. They're very similar. And then, you know, my wife's very normal size. So we fit on the bike really well. I think if we were both, you know, I was almost 300 and 6'5", and she was 6 foot tall and a 200-pound woman. I don't know how well we'd fit on this bike, but I would say that I don't feel very cramped. Do you? I mean, does it feel pretty open?
Yes, it does. I don't feel like I'm, you know, trying to squish in or crunch my legs up or anything like that.
Right. So how far do you think you can ride without feeling the need to get up, walk around, and change positions on this?
I don't know what the mileage is, but my average time before I really need to stand up and take a break is about 2 hours. I can go comfortably 3 hours if I'm being very conscious of moving my legs and rocking my feet back and forth on the foot panels and not sitting still, just looking around. So it's 2 hours at the shortest, maybe 3 at the longest.
Right. Now, we just did a ride where we went from Pigeon Forge all the way home, and that was about a little over 500 miles and about 7.5 hours of riding. How'd you feel about that ride? And you know, and be critical, be honest, because people are going to be doing those kind of rides with this bike.
Yes, the first 2 hours were actually great. I was very comfortable. I made sure to sit straight up and down, and I was moving my legs back and forth and kind of rocking my feet. The thing you don't want to do is let your muscles just get tight and not move at all. So the first 2 hours were great. The second, I think we took a break, and so the second 2 hours I had stretched a little bit, and that was good. The last 3.5 hours, I'll admit, they started off uncomfortable down to, I wouldn't say torturous, but it got very uncomfortable, and that was a couple reasons. First, as we got closer to home, it became very hot and humid, so in my gear I was starting to get very uncomfortable, and I really struggled, if you remember, with the knee pads in my gear. They were pressing on my knees because I was trying to break them in still. So I would say that without the pressure from the knee pads, The worst thing was my feet would start to feel uncomfortable and painful. But that was at, 5.5 hours, 6 hours. The last hour was very, very difficult.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say even for me, like after a while just being in one position, I mean, I could even say that for a car, a car ride that long, and in a car you can obviously move around more. But now if you compare this to like the VTX 1300, could you have ever done that ride on that?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. I think it's a huge difference. How do you feel back there in terms of like feeling secure in the way it wraps you around and the way that you sit back there behind me? Because you and I like barely touch each other,
right?
Like on this bike. Like, I mean, I can feel your legs against me, but like, I mean, there is some distance between us. So how do you feel about like how secure do you feel back there with the way that wraps around and the way the tour pack is?
I do feel very secure. I have told you that on other rides, I felt close to sleeping. I never actually fell asleep, but I was so comfortable and never felt like I might slip that I've closed my eyes for minutes at a time and not felt like I was going to fall off or anything like that.
Right. So, the noise, so before we go to noise, wind back there, how much wind do you get on you? I mean, are you looking over my head? Are you looking over the windshield? Do you feel the wind buffeting your helmet, or is it pretty quiet back there?
So I'm short enough that I am basically looking at the back of your head. If I really stretched, I could see a tiny bit, but I can't really see above your head.
Okay, and on the interstate, is the wind beating you up, or are you pretty comfortable?
On the interstate, I do feel pretty comfortable. If it's a very windy day, I might feel the wind on my head, and that's really if I lean from either side to see around you. But overall, I get enough wind that I'm not just sitting back here kind of sweating or uncomfortable, but not so much that I'm really bouncing around a lot.
Right. So the other bikes we had all had foot pegs that you put your feet on. How much nicer has it been going from the foot pegs to the floating floorboards?
So much nicer. Those really put a very pinpointed pressure on your foot, and there's not a lot you can do to adjust.
Right.
With the floating foot pads, I can rock my feet back and forth, and I do make sure that I do that because that helps with, your comfort in sitting for a long time.
Right. So the ultimate touring bike, from us talking, is like the Goldwing. And you rode on my dad's Goldwing when we would ride around on that occasionally. And just for our viewers, that was a 2012 that my dad had, and we would ride that. And in fact, he owned that when I owned this. So we would play around on that every now and then because he didn't ride it very much. But what do you think about the comfort of this versus the Goldwing? And be brutally honest.
I do think this is a slight step down from the comfort of the Goldwing for me. The seat is a little bigger, the backrest is a little bigger. It's more like sitting almost in a car. The foot pads are more comfortable. But this, I would say, is still considerably more comfortable than, your previous bikes.
Right. So how important are things like heated seats to you? I mean, is that a big deal, not a big deal, or like it would just be kind of nice to have?
It's not a big deal. It would be very nice to have, especially, on mornings when we've gone for rides in the mountains and it hasn't quite warmed up. That would be very comfortable. I tend to run cold as soon as if I get too much wind on me, then it's hard for me to warm back up. So it would be nice, but it's not a deal breaker.
Right. So as we wind down the interview here, loud pipes or like the silence of the Goldwing, what do you like better?
They each have their benefits. The loud pipes, somebody will see you, they'll hear you, and they'll be more likely to see you. For longer rides, I would say it would be nice to have the silence of the Goldwing because, when you get off the bike after a couple hours, you realize how loud it was. I will say, though, that a lot of times while we're riding, I don't notice the noise as much. It's an after thing. When we've stopped riding, I notice the I don't even know what to say. I noticed that it was very loud and my ears were very sensitive.
Well, and I think some of that is probably, like, if you're not wearing earplugs, just the noise of the interstate, tends to kind of, it's a bit deafening. Do you find that on here too, or is it more from the noise of the interstate, or just the kind of the droning of the exhaust?
The worst I have noticed is a combination of the droning of the exhaust combined with we've been on the interstate for a long time. On roads like we're on right now, the motorcycle is obviously much louder than the road noise, and that's what I notice. But it's not so much that I'm annoyed or that I feel like I'm getting fatigued by the amount of noise.
Right, and I think when we've talked before, sometimes you're like, the rumble of the V-twin is nice, but then other times it's like, you know what? On these longer rides, I'd like for it to just be quiet.
Yes, and at certain, RPMs, obviously it's louder and there's a more annoying noise to it.
Right. Than
other times, but overall, it's not bad. It's really, while I'm riding, I don't notice it much.
Right. So when you sit back there, how much vibration do you feel? I mean, is it buzzy? Is there any vibration, or is it pretty smooth?
It is pretty smooth. There is, of course, some vibration. You're not sitting completely still. It's not, the smoothest ride I've ever had. However, it's not, I recently had a back injury and it's not bothering me.
Right. So overall, compared to, and pretty much every bike we've had was set up for a passenger with a sissy bar and a seat. And this, in terms of the way the tour pack is, how much better is having that giant seat behind you than just having a sissy bar in terms of like how secure you feel?
It's a world difference. Like, there's no comparison of this to the very small seat that basically fits on the small of your back. That is, with vibration and the way that you sit, or if you're sitting on it for a long time, you can't compare to this seat. I would say I would never go back to that kind of seat. You could only get more comfortable. You could only go, bigger seats, more comfortable seats. I could never ride on those again, personally. Right.
Now, I mean, if it was for short distance, obviously, I guess you could probably do it for a little bit. But I guess it sounds like what you're saying is that this motorcycle has kind of spoiled you in terms of what is comfortable and kind of how secure you feel on a motorcycle now.
Oh, absolutely.
Would you ever ride on the back of my FZ09?
Absolutely not.
I can't blame you. Hey folks, if you're looking at this little road we're on here, there are a series of roads that go in and around and through the Yorktown battlefields, and this is just one of them here. They're like 10-mile-an-hour speed limit, and you just kind of get to cruise through and look at some really nice scenery. We have gone, and with you on the back, and you have done, I don't know, I think we said 6,000 or 7,000 miles on this bike now. We've been to the Tail of the Dragon, Cherhola Skyway, Blue Ridge Parkway, and all, through the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, North Carolina. What's your favorite ride we did through there? What'd you think of the Tail of the Dragon?
Anything in the mountains, I think, is my favorite. I like to see that type of scenery. When it gets very windy, that's my least favorite, but even it's still nice. I don't know which one is my favorite.
Right.
I've never thought about it.
What do you think about touring on a motorcycle? Because we really never did any touring before, and when I was working, as a motor officer, we really didn't do a lot of riding during that period, and this is kind of what we used to dip our toes into the world of touring on a bike. We always did it in a car. What do you think about like how it feels to be immersed kind of in the environment that you're in touring on a motorcycle versus a car?
You definitely notice your surroundings in a much different way when you're on a motorcycle versus riding through even this type of ride in a car. You see all of the trees above you. You smell things that are starting to bloom. When we rode through Cherokee, we could smell wood fires, and so it's a different experience. It's really a completely immersive experience versus you look out the window and you might notice the trees a little bit.
Right. So obviously, people have been in bad motorcycle accidents and stuff like that. How much anxiety do you have about riding? I mean, do you worry about it much when you ride, or are you enjoying more than you're worrying, or maybe you're not worrying at all?
I'm not really worrying at all. Occasionally, if I have noticed something on the road, I might become more attentive, but overall, I'm not really paying attention or worried about the ride at all.
Right. So, and I know you don't look at motorcycles like I do. Is there any motorcycle that you would want more than this one?
I think the only thing I would say is really about the back seat and the comfort for me. So going maybe to a Goldwing would probably be the only next step.
Are you giving me permission to buy a Goldwing?
I am not.
I tried. It sounded like we were getting close there. I think if we do this a couple more times, I can probably get there.
I think so, maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, so we have a maybe. So anyways, hey, look, this was a perspective from the passenger who has done thousands of miles on this bike, and I think a lot of good points have been brought up here. And this might be a good video if you're considering doing some touring with your wife and girlfriend, or girlfriend and girl. I guess back to my other point, don't do it at the same time, right? Was that funny?
That was very funny.
Yeah, big laughs.
Yes,
big laughs.
lots
Hey,
of laughs.
I think that's deserving of a like and maybe a subscribe. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, anyways, we're doing new content here on the channel of Voyaging Voyager. I changed the name. The old one had to do with sailboats, and I'm not doing much sailing anymore. So, anyways, if you enjoy this, give us a like, and if you have any questions, if your wife or significant other has a question about the bike, post it in the comments, and we'll make sure it's addressed. I'll try to look at each one of them. But anyways, we're heading home for the day. We're gonna get some lunch here. We did a little cruise and circle around the historic triangle, which around here we know as Yorktown, Williamsburg, and Jamestown. So it's been a really nice day today, and a good conversation about the Voyager here from the perspective of the passenger. So anyways, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. All right, let it run for like 15 seconds and then kill it.
Okay.
I hope you were recording that, because that was production gold right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Do you think it was production gold?
Sounded great to me.
So yes?
Yes.
Can I get a Goldwing?